Put it right up in the Facebook group.
I have to send it to myself first.
Oh, because you could have done it right from here. Oh, so I'm no longer on the Facebook. You lost it? Yeah. I'm gone.
Well, no, you're still streaming the new link, but where I wanted to post this now.
But I can't even see myself.
No, you're on.
You realize that, right?
You're showing. Right
That's old.
That's on.
It is. I didn't touch my face.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So should I go back to Facebook here?
Just don't touch me. Okay. Found you.
Hmm? Oh, am I? But I'm not here on mine. Quick question. Should I open up my Facebook again? Because we lost it somehow.
Posted it on Facebook just now.
You're not listening. I don't have Facebook here. Should I open it up?
No.
Okay. So I won't be able to read chat box.
You're watching. Three have connected to your.
So should I just start teaching again?
Yeah.
Is it recording? Huh?
Huh?
Is it recording?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, good. Let's start again. There's 3 of you there. Hello, 3 of you. Whoever you are, hopefully other people figure out how to get there. Suki's sending out links. Wenke has a question. Is Wenke one of the people listening, I hope? Can't tell you. It doesn't give the names?
No.
Okay. How does the sun, moon, and ascendant influence us, our behavior, thoughts, and so on? Is it the same principle as in Western astrology? Definitely don't drag things from Western astrology into Indian astrology. Definitely don't. That's how a lot of people really mess up good Indian astrology. Most Indian astrology that's out there and palmistry, honestly, it's been tainted by Western stuff, and they think it's enhancing it, but Indian astrology is not lacking anything, honestly. So it doesn't enhance it. It kind of messes it up. So how does the sun, moon, and ascendant influence us, our behavior and thoughts? Well, that's too big a question because, Wenke, if you know something about astrology, it's the condition of the sun, moon, and the ascendant. It's what houses the sun and moon are in. It's what nakshatra, lunar constellation out of the 28 it's in. It's what degrees of nakshatra makes a difference. So, what degrees in the sign as well, in the constellation, major constellation makes a difference. What yogas the planets are partaking in, involved in. So it's really huge. It's really huge. It's not a question we can answer like in this format. Sorry about that. That's go study astrology. Okay, we're going to teach it soon. Suki will one day be ready to teach. She's ready, but she wants to do a lot more sessions for people first because that's the fun part. Number 2, during the Nadi reading you mentioned working with and transforming negative karma are easier to become aware of, but the positive ones are more difficult. How do we know what the positive karma is? How do we transform good karma? So I'm not really sure what I said. I'd love to hear the recording. Basically, it's easier because negative karma is easier because we see the results right away. We see how it's getting us in trouble. If we have any ability to be self-aware and self-reflect, we see the negative karma, we see it's causing us trouble. Okay, so we can go and work on it. And in the chart, it's obvious too. The positive karma, we shouldn't really try to transform that right away. Work on the negative first. That's creating the most obstacles. Positive karma is creating merit for us. Eventually, like you said, yes, we have to become non-attached even to the positive karma. But that's the last step, not the first step. So the first step is get rid of that negative karma. Number 3, are we supposed to dissolve, destroy the ego, or transform it so that it will function differently? In a nutshell, you can't destroy that ego structure. You can't. It has to be worked with in a much gentler way of understanding. And that's why there are the Jivatma Shakti teachings. The Atma Shakti series or cycle of teachings is designed to help us understand the proper role of the individual self, right? The ego structure and the ego formation material. Now, what we want to do is feed the ego machine, the self-image making machine, positive images that work with our spiritual practice. So that's why we do so much visualization. That's why we do so much second attention, to try to remember ourselves as a wisdom being, a deity, whatever. That's the way we have to work with it for now. In Shaivism, there's the idea that eventually our ego structure will grow so big through this expansion of it that it becomes Shiva itself. But that is a concept that's kind of like a kid's tale, fairy tale. It doesn't really work that way. The ego structure should be built upon in a positive dharmic way to create a yogic ego structure right up through stage 5, 6. In that transition, then you get rid of it. You start letting go. You do the other side. You go down the hill. So going up the hill, you create a positive functional ego structure, self-image, just like in psychology, actually. But here it's not psychological based. You're doing spiritual work to create this positive self-image, this ahankara. Once you get over the hump of 6 in stage 7, you start going downhill, and that means in terms of your self-image making machine, you start feeding it less fuel. You start relaxing it. You start opening it and saying, I don't even need a self-image anymore. And then what's there naturally arising spontaneously in your activity in each moment, that presents as a self per se. So all attention on that whole process is gone from that point on. That's more the practical way it really works. Let's see. If there are more prana pulsating in parts of your body, should you just let it be, or are there exercises to help it flow through? I'm noticing my left eye feel different, strained compared to my right eye now after some intense pulsating for a long time. Yeah. It's these minor changes in our physiology or our energy body, they're always going to come and go. Don't worry about them until they become really symptomatic of something larger, right? These little things will constantly be coming in and out. I wouldn't give them too much thought. Jorge, could you please clarify what is dual versus non-dual in this context of TMI, and what does Dharma mean? Wow, that's a big question. The usual way, Jorge, that duality, non-duality is described applies in Trikamasa Yoga. That is the understanding that duality is when we are, well, duality in general is anytime there's a subject-object division, anytime there's a knower and a known, a capacity to know, which is apprehending an object, whether it's an object or not. But in the apprehension, we make it an object. In the apprehension of ourself, we make it a self, an object, right? So that's duality, strictly speaking. Now, how is duality understood in different traditions? I mean, they all agree that that's duality. They all agree that non-duality is when you take away the object and only the subject exists. But this is where it's different from tradition to tradition. The best way to understand it, it's difficult to understand, and it's really difficult to explain in words, but simply put like this. In theoretical Shaivism, I'm going to call it theoretical or neo-philosophical is how I usually call it, because we had the practice before we had the text, right? So in neo-philosophical or theoretical Shaivism, which actually every tradition I've seen of non-dual Shaivism that comes from Kashmir, supposedly, Abhinavagupta's group, not Shaiva Siddhanta, which is Shaivist yoga that's dualistic, a semi-non-dualistic, which the text of which were commandeered by Kashmir Shaivists and reinterpreted in non-dual fashion. But all the neo-philosophical Shaivism and the theoretical Shaivist yoga schools out there today, including Mr. Wallace's, etc., teach that when you get rid of every bit of subject-object dichotomy, every bit of the mind grasping on concepts, when you become completely non-conceptual and then go beyond non-conceptual, because there are non-conceptual states that are not full realization. This is really important to understand. that people don't understand. From Shaivism, they especially don't understand. I see this all the time. Students will write to me and talk to me at retreats or write me letters. I get it every single week. I'm having such and such and such experience. I'm fully realized. No, you're in a non-conceptual trance. It's very different than fully realized. So here's how it breaks down. In Shaivism, we think that once we get rid of all differentiation in modern theoretical neo-philosophical Shaivism, we think that when we break down all differentiation, all discursive thinking, and thinking is not arising anymore, and it's not making subject-object, and feelings aren't making subject-object, and we experience ourselves as one with the universe with absolutely no boundaries. Some Shaivists say we can be realized and still be in a body. Some say you have to get it after death. Most would say in the body. But they're saying that they can become one with everything in their consciousness. And once you're one with everything, you're fully realized. That's pure non-duality, because what they're seeking to become one with is this understanding of Shiva as a one state of non-conceptuality, pure non-duality, subject without object, and you're one with that state. And it's the one overarching base that everything arises from as individual, as dual, and so forth, and dissolves back into it. That's what they call Shiva in these modern schools. Within that, there's also the understanding that you could be one with Shiva and still hosting all the energy arising as Spanda Shakti, all the abhasas or appearances of objects arising, and fully know that they're not objects. Everything's kind of dreamlike and lovely, and it's this energy display, this lila, and it dissolves back into your own essence, right? And that doesn't disturb your non-duality, supposedly. But you're in this non-dual state. Now, the important thing is in Shaivism, you have to understand this, and I'm sure you do from studying Jorge, the non-duality is said to be only one. And that everybody in this room, we're all part of that one non-duality, that one Shiva consciousness. This is very big in the Indian experience of Tantra. That we have to get rid of our individuality, even down to that I think I'm Dharma Bodhi and you think you're Jorge and so forth. And we actually are fooling ourselves because we're actually not different. That you and I are absolutely not different. We are one non-dual soup. And when we get rid of every discursive difference, every variegation, we're going to realize that we're one experience. And this is not the experience of the other traditions of non-duality, of Zhengyi Dao, Taoism, of Dzogchen, or of Vajrayana Buddhism. Shaivism is alone in this view, and this is why it's tied to theism, because that ultimate state is said to be God, said to be Shiva as a God. So the way I was trained in Shaivism was definitely not that. The Trika Shaivism I was taught was that the Shiva nature is pure sentientness, pure self-awareness. That's all it is. And it didn't say there's only one, and we all become one with that one consciousness. We all become, that's what we really are. We realize we are only that one. But it wasn't explicit saying it was individual either. When I first was trained in Shaivism, Shaivist yoga, my teacher left it for my own discovery. And as I went years and years and years of practice, and I went really hard on this, I never could find a self. I never really could find a self, an individual, independent, objective self. So yeah, I became a non-dualist. But at the same time, after years and years and years of practice, and very ardent practice, and I'm kind of sharp, I'm not that dull, not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I'm not the dullest either. I wasn't able to find the non-dual experience either. This soup that everybody was talking about, where I become one with everything. And as I went deeper into studying more, again, the Mahasiddhas' lives, I realized they weren't doing that either. They weren't talking about that either. They weren't even doing that. And examining my first guru, Indian teacher, is teaching, I realized he wasn't saying that either. Oh, and then what was he saying? And then I got into Dzogchen and Wu Wei Dao more, and they were saying what I think my first teacher was saying, which was, it's different than Shaivism. Now get this difference here. Instead of one soup, yes, non-duality is still non-duality, but I have my experience of my essence nature as that non-duality. You have your experience of your essence nature as that non-duality. But your experience of it arises as your experience of it. Mine arises as my experience of it. These are individual, not the same. So it's not a soup that we're trying to join and get rid of all our individuality. And I think it's also very good on a practical level to have this teaching understood, because the drive to experience this non-dual soup, this enlightened soup, I think also creates cults. I know you're like, what? No, but it really does, because the person who then is the teacher of this experience says, I'm abiding in this non-dual soup. I'm there. And all the students are like, wow, man, because I've been meditating 20, 30 years and I'm not there. I don't know what you're talking about. I can't have any practical experience of that. And it creates this division where everybody starts adulating the teacher, projecting onto them some divinity and sacredness, projecting onto them a non-duality that you're not experiencing. And that is where I see all these Indian traditions or Indian-based traditions taught by non-Indians nowadays are seriously prone to making cults. And most of them do make cults, to be honest. Most of them do make cults. Even my early attempts at teaching, people projected onto me this kind of status. I never said I had this ever, but everyone expected it from the theory and projected it onto me. And culty kind of vibe developed. And I'm like, oh God, this is horrible. So we have to be really careful about this. Rather, in Dzogchen, in Tantric Buddhism, in Taoism, in the ancient, I believe the ancient Shaivist tradition, the pre-Shaivist tradition of the neo-philosophical theoretic Tantric out there now, there is a different understanding that non-duality is still non-conceptuality. Non-duality is still awareness without an object, subject without object. But the difference is we're not all joining some soup. The difference is we don't really have one mind. If we had one essence mind, when one person got realized, became enlightened, everyone would have gotten enlightened in the universe. Now, the rishis have been enlightened. The Tantric Mahasiddhas have been enlightened. The Buddha's been enlightened. Taoist masters, so many have been enlightened. Rainbow bodies are being experienced all the time, as you know. I put them up online when we get pictures from them, when they occur, and someone takes photos. So if that were happening, if we were all one mind, if we were all one, truly one essence, when that essence woke up to its own nature, we would as well. There could be no localized experience of unconsciousness. It wouldn't be possible. Not to mention, if we really had one mind, I would know what you're thinking. You would know what I'm thinking. We would know what everybody's thinking, blah, 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 blah. We can go on and on about it. So the ancient idea from the Mahasiddha tradition was, no, there is non-duality. And I am experiencing pure non-duality that exactly is the same as yours. My experience of it is the same as your experience of it, which means I have an individual nature, not an individual self. In the Jivatma Shakti teachings, that's why we talk about 10 forces and nadi, because we're not really a self. We're an individual nature trying to recognize its own nature. So you have your own nature. I have my own nature. Everybody listening to this, you have your own nature. I have my own nature. My own nature is non-dual. Your own nature is non-dual. Someone says, well, no, as soon as you have two like that, it makes duality. And I'm saying no, because this is not something I'm talking about existing in time and space. Your nature of individual nature doesn't exist within time and space, where time and space makes the possibility of duality, subject-object, difference. So I'm using words to describe an experience that is way beyond time and space. But that experience is that there's individual nature. In other words, you're having your individual knowing. What would happen if your individual knowing was wiped out? You'd be dead. You'd be nihilistic, non-existent. Shaivists from this modern school of thought where most teachers teach from today, from Lakshman Ju down through all of them, Mark Tichkowski, Paul Muller-Ortega, Wallace, Douglas Brooks, like all of them that came out of that and keep coming, Carlos Palmeda, everybody, they're going to say it's only a one soup. But it's actually never been demonstrable to be a one soup. It's always been an individual all the way through, and even after death, and even after rainbow body. It's individual, non-dual nature. And I've got to go with it because it's the result of my experience. My first teacher said, teach your experience. And that's my experience. After all these years of meditating and still going deeper into it, this is the truth. And then it matches. But here's the thing. It is actually taught in modern terms. There is no break in that teaching. I believe Shaivism has a break in it that happened around 800 CE. And it became more religious, lockdown, theistic, God, you, soul, get rid of it. Now you're just one with God, theism. But that's impossible. I think theism is a serious problem. It's an eternalistic construct. And if you say I'm sounding like a Buddhist, I don't care, because I think that that's important for us to understand, right? There are no eternal concepts. So the modern teaching of Vajrayana, the modern teaching of Dzogchen, the modern teaching of Taoism, Jingyi Dao, all says there's an individual nature. We don't have a problem with that, right? It's beautiful to get rid of this concept of the big soup because it's unattainable. First of all, it's unattainable. It's not real. It creates a lot of striving in people and pain and suffering because they can't realize it. Second, it creates big divisions. Well, I'm in a non-dual, but you're not in the non-dual. I'm in my essence. And it creates, third thing, delusion, because you think you're supposed to be non-preferential. Individual nature expressing in this life, in this dimension, can be samsara or nirvana or beyond both. Individual nature, your realization of your nature, can be in this dimension beyond samsara and nirvana. And you can still order a pizza because you want a pizza. That can be a spontaneously arising preference, right? It doesn't have to be based on conditioning. And even if it's based on conditioning, check it out. Once you recognize your individual nature, it doesn't matter. But that's what makes this high teaching so dangerous. Because people will rationalize, well, I wanted to have sex with this person. It wasn't me. It was my higher nature spontaneously arising. Well, I wanted to punch this person. Why? It wasn't me, because it was just moved through me with the Spanda Shakti. That's where it's really dangerous. And it leads to delusion. It only takes a few thousand followers on your Facebook group to start thinking that you really have this experience and start doing really weird stuff with people at your trainings and develop a cult, and start to put on airs of being so suffused with the non-dual, You may not, you're too smart to come out and say, I'm in the non-dual, but you act like you're in it. You know what I mean? People, these teachers out there will act like they're in it. So I think it keeps it real, which is really important. And it is real. I think it's the truth. I think it's the reality. It's my experience. And three main non-dual traditions in the world agree. So I'm with them. I think the fourth is the original Shaivism. And I really am trying to correct Shaivism. Those original Mahasiddhas could not have experienced stage 10 as a Mahasiddha or 11 and 12 as a rainbow body being unless they knew their individual nature as everything. And I honestly think that's why they're, let me make something radically clear here. This hopefully will blow people away, and I hope it will. I hope you'll use it in your discrimination of these, teachers out there today with no attainment, no view, no self-realization, because I believe this is why the neo-philosophical, theoretical, Shaivist yoga groups that are out there now are not having results. I think that's why a lot of my early students didn't have results either, because I wasn't making it explicitly clear. It was still forming in my understanding of it. And, I think that's why they're not getting results now in these other groups. They're looking for something that can't be attained. The more they can't attain it, the more the teacher acts like they have it. The teacher is actually lying to themselves. And I think there's an insecurity there from the teachers. Well, I've got all these students now, and I'm talking about this non-dual soup. I better act like I'm in it, even though I have no idea what I'm talking about. But then it goes to their heads, and they start to become cult leaders, and they start abusing the students because they think they're actually this kind of expression of beyond nirvana samsara, I'm all that is all, I'm one with Shiva. This whole dream delusion, including my body and my personality, it's all a dream delusion. And I think that's super dangerous, right? So there you go. That's dual non-dual from TMY context. We could do another few hours on it. Crystal, what is the role of creativity in the spiritual path? No role. You're creative at work, or you're creative in your play. You're creative, great. If you're not a really great creative person, doesn't matter. Creativity is a function of your karma. So some people are vastly creative, some people aren't, but it doesn't have anything to do with your realization potential. So that's good to know. You say, it seems that creative inspiration, am I reading slow enough now? Seems that creative inspiration can be both a vehicle for spirituality as well as a distraction. It can be a way to express and connect or a way to reinforce the ego. Yeah, sure. Like the whole modern art movement came out of people's ego structure. It goes along with psychology and throwing God and sacred out of the center, for sure. So it can be an expression of our self, or it can be an ego, for sure. When I play guitar, it can be something that I'm expressing. So it's delayed. It can be something that I'm expressing with the guitar, with a beautiful feeling of a sound I want to hear, and it resonates back in and it's beautiful. Or I could be on stage jamming it, playing AC/DC and let everybody do headbanging, and I'm feeling great because they love my music, or whatever. So you're exactly right. How do you recommend relating to our creative impulse as relates to craft, like art, music, writing? I think when you have that creativity, when your third house is jacked with all kinds of goodies and you've got this Taurus thing for writing or whatever else is going on, just do it. Let it happen. Just let it come out. This is your naughty after all. You can do stuff without having to be self-reflective about it. That's the ego that wants to be proud of you while you're doing it, amazed by yourself while you're doing it. Chogyam Trungpa had whatever faults he had, which he had many. He had some great aspects to himself. And one he had was his turn of phrase. It was just brilliant. And one time he said, the key problem with Westerners is they want to witness their own enlightenment. Oh my God. Let that hit you. That's boom, mic drop. He walk off stage, with his gin and tonic over here and his cigarette, or straight gin. That's our problem. We're always trying to witness our own spiritual development. This is what's wrong with the whole neo-tantric, new age, modern Shaivist crap I see out there. Man, when I read those threads on those groups, honestly, it makes me sad. So sad. It makes other people nauseous, because what you read is people just so self-infatuated with their spiritual life. It's like, dude, that is stage one, acting out in the guise of spirituality. Take all of what you experienced and just flush in the toilet. And the thing is, those people are so disappointed when they come to practice with me, because I won't feed any of that stuff. And then they go, oh, I'm obviously more evolved than that teacher, so that person's no good. I'm going on. They won't acknowledge my greatness, the God realm fixation, right? It's really sad. Let your creativity flow out. Don't look at it and go, damn, I'm good, or look how amazing I'm flowing right now. Oh my God, I'm the goddess of Kundalini with creativity. Just don't do all that stuff. Just be like, I love writing. Be simple. I love writing. Here it comes. Beautiful. Now I'll edit it and fix it. Don't be self-conscious about how great you are at it or how bad you are at it. Just be creative. Let it happen. David, is reading or listening to view teachings advised for when one is on retreat? I ask because though it is a beneficial activity, it also has entertainment qualities that could distract one from challenging but important aspects of the retreat. David, great question. And it really asks what kind of retreat you're on. Sometimes there are retreats where you are supposed to read passages from books or something. I wouldn't listen to videos. I wouldn't get involved with it's too much temptation. And I wouldn't listen to videos or listen to recordings on my phone. I would read, because the silence of it is very good. And your own voice being used in the reading is very good. And it quiets the mind, So like on a meditation retreat, there are different kinds. Some you're trying to unwind everything. You already have full instructions. You're already fully inspired. You know what to do. You just want to go away and just be in that state as much as possible and confront your mind, your little mind function. But there are other retreats where it's semi-contemplative, or it's not as strict on the meditation part. And you go, I'm going to do 3 meditation sessions a day. And in between, I'm just going to relax. So I'm going to walk in the woods, listen to the brook, cook my food, whatever. And then I'm going to read my spiritual text, because it's relaxing and beautiful and it keeps me in the mode of the view. But I'm going to be aware that I'm reading while I'm reading. I'm going to apply second intention to be aware that I'm reading while I'm reading. This is spiritual practice. So this is how I would approach it. I probably wouldn't use electronic devices. When I used to go on retreat, I didn't take them at all. It would only be me and nature, or myself, nature, and a journal I'm writing, or myself, nature, and my journal, and a text I wanted to read, or 2. But that would be about it. Sometimes, in fact, I remember one retreat, I packed 4 or 5 sacred texts, and I was ready to really do some deep study in this one area. But as soon as I started meditating, the first day, and I opened up in retreat, you go to bed with dream yoga, the intention to wake up in retreat. So I woke up in retreat mode. That was the end of the text. I never even got him out of the bag. I left him in the bag, just meditated the whole time. I took a walk about 150 meters down to a brook, a beautiful brook. It was very hot summer, and big pine trees were leaning over this brook, or willows, but it was very dark along this brook, very bright out here and very dark along the brook. And it was very cool, very cooling air. And there was a little natural platform on a rock about 3 feet above the water, no mosquitoes. So I sat down in there. So I would meditate in the hot part of the day down there, about 6 hours down there, morning in the hut, 6 hours down there, back to the hut late afternoon, meditate in the hut, night meditation under the moon again after a short nap. Never got into the books. So sometimes even you plan to do it, it doesn't work. But if you're going away to really go deep into the view, it's good. Read some stuff on the view, read your notes on the view from our teachings, our classes, whatever. And then when the books are out, you'll be able to read our books and then meditate on it. Actually, literally meditate on one of the concepts from that view. Okay. Timo, which mantras would you consider to be indispensable for any yogi to recite 100,000 times in a single lifetime? Could you please chant these mantras once so we can start reciting them ourselves in the correct way? Well, there are recordings out of the mantras. I think they're on the Facebook group, aren't they? Yeah, you can get the recordings on the Facebook group. Mantras should be given in a very sacred context, and that's a lot of these teachings have to come in sacred context. I'll do 10 forces to a certain degree, but I won't teach Atma-Shakti practice, the yogic practice with the breathing and the kriya and the mantra and the movements. I won't do that because certain things should be in the right context. So there's a lot of practices that we can teach online, but majority in our tradition have to be learned in person. Mantra is one of them. However, having said that, it's good to receive even online initiation into the Mahamrityunjaya mantra and Gayatri mantra. Those are the ones we want to do 100,000 repetitions of to purify attachment through 2 different vehicles and to bring in higher wisdom and so on. So those are the main ones. The only ones that we talk really about getting 100,000 of are those. And then you may want to do or have to do certain planetary mantras, and they have certain numbers you have to repeat. Or you may get initiated into a certain sadhana, which has a certain number of repetitions to repeat if it has a mantra involved in it. But there's no like list of 20 mantras that you should do 100,000 of. Okay. Could you please chant? Okay. 2, is knowing the literal meaning of the words of a mantra necessary in order to obtain a full benefit when reciting? Not really. It's not really necessary as long as you understand the energy of the mantra overall. If the mantra is bija mantras, it has no literal meaning. So if it's, Om, Hring, Shring, Hung, Pat, Swaha, those are all bijas and they don't mean anything in language. So they're just an energy quantity that produces a change in your consciousness, your energy body. If, on the other hand, if it's Raung, Jung, Saha, Ong, Trambakam, Yajamahe, Sugandhim, Bushti, Varadanam, Urvarukam, Vabandanam, Najor, Mukshimamritate, that has structure of verse, that has meaning. And you can read it, and it's interesting. Oh, cool. It's about the 3-eyed one, Shiva, that's fragrant like sandalwood paste. And, I want to be, I want to be blessed by him so I can be detached and free, like when a piece of vegetables broken off of the vine and free, have moksha. But it's not something I'd be visualizing, me being a vegetable broken off. There was one guy who was really hung up on this for a long time in the group and constantly was writing it about, I don't like this cucumber thing. He would write all the time. It's kind of funny because it's not about that. It's the energy of detachment that comes from it. The wisdom, that's really Agya Chakra practice, and it's a wisdom mantra. So that gets it. And then with the Gayatri mantra, the Bhurbhuvasvaha, that one, then that is more the radiant sun of wisdom from the heart. It's a very different exercise, but still, again, detachment and filling up our wisdom, basically. So you don't need to know literal meanings, even though there is literal meanings for both. It's the quantity of energy, the whole thing, the vibration power that counts. Number 3, when doing the morning prayer in bed, first thing when one wakes up, what should we pray for? Well, that's up to you and what your consciousness is all about. In the morning when I do my first prayer, it's very long. I mean, I'm practicing, but the practice I'm doing when I'm laying in bed, 45 minutes, half hour, hour can go. There's so many phases of it. It's all a prayer. It's all an affirmation of the higher view teachings in experiential form. That's what all sadhana is. But a general prayer, if you want to do a quick prayer and then you get out of bed, it can be, you can pray for things like, let me stay aware all day. Let me remember my gurus and their love and compassion, their kindness and generosity. Let me remember that I'm part of an amazing Hori tradition from ancient times that I should, be so grateful for. I remember gratitude in my heart for all these beings who gave so much of their lives so that we could benefit. Let me live up to that grace, the promise and gift of that grace. And let me experience my life in the fullness and power and positivity that are potentially there. Let me recognize my nature and let me act in a dharmic way for the benefit of all beings. Every single moment of my day, every breath I make, let it be a prayer. Every movement, let it be a ritual. Let every doorway of body, speech, and mind express nothing but benefic grace and compassion for all beings. Like this way we should pray in the morning for sure. It's just some ideas, spontaneous there. When offering foods or flowers to deities on our altar, should we also be doing a prayer or chanting a mantra? You can. There are offering mantras, right? And what would be suitable food items? Anything that you want to cook is suitable if it comes from your heart. Any offering you want to make is suitable if it comes from your heart. This is an important principle in personal puja. But when you're doing puja for the public, a temple setting, a community, a group of families, then it's always said that we should follow a certain format. It's very important to follow a format then. So everybody's included and do the right thing. And you don't have this thing where you love to offer marshmallow squares and everybody's like, why is he offering marshmallow squares? That's so weird. And it throws everybody off, But for you, it's the greatest offering because it's your favorite food. So you're giving it to the deity instead of yourself, right? You understand? That's the principle right there. What mantra should you be chanting? Well, that's part of puja practice and so on. That comes in the way of water and cannot be taught during Yogi to Yogi. Sorry about that, my dear friend. See you soon, Rotterdam. Lulu, when we do the prostrations, we are praying that the karmas of our ancestors going back through time are cleared. And that our ancestors are in a better place. Well, that's nice. At the same time, we know we have come to this life after many, many lives of reincarnation. Is anybody online still? Yeah? Anybody online still? Okay, so we found our way back. At the same time, we know that we have come to this life after many, many lives of reincarnation. Similarly, our ancestors, once they pass, would also have been reborn into other lives and other lives again and again. How does this work? I seem to get it, but also don't quite completely. So we are working and concentrating only on this one particular line of experience of our own this time. Yes, exactly. Could you kindly talk about it more? Well, that's really it. You kind of summarized it. Your ancestors in your line is what matters. They all come into the present moment. When we're doing prostrations, right, we're visualizing behind us is the past. In front of us is the future that we're going to, and here we're in the present. Now, in the beginning of practice, we want to dissolve our attachment to the past. We want to dissolve our attachment to the future after that. Eventually, got to dissolve it to the present too. But we're experiencing this incredible karma, this incredible restriction and limitation that keeps us in suffering based on that past and that past showing up now in us as the now. So we bring all that past into the now, which is the only way we can transform it. We can't go back in the past. So with our prostrations, with our pujas, with our offerings, with our mind, with our daily activities, our conduct, we're bringing all the activity of our ancestors from the past into the present. And we're offering it into the wisdom fire, right, to be transformed. So yes, we're only working that line. That's it. It's not a big, hard thing to figure out. But man, you can really see the effects of your ancestors if you really meditate on it, Travis, my question is about development of the body in the early stages of TMY. In the last lineage of Taoist Neigong that I trained in, a huge emphasis was given in the beginning of training to the development of the shape of the body. Specific exercises were prescribed in the training while others were frowned upon, such as body weight training. Like I imagine you're saying calisthenics, right? The way this was explained was that bodybuilding develops a different body than the Neigong body. And so the two training methods would clash and halt one's progress. Are there similar guidelines in the TMY system? Would it be ill-advised for a yogi to participate in weight training, for example? This is a great question. Really great, Trevor. So, Travis. So, Does doing hard physical exercise interfere with cultivating this other kind of body experience? That depends on whom and when. If you already are very sensate, very, very sensitive to your body, right? You've achieved what these Neigong exercises are supposed to do for you. And like, I'm going to say something that sounds almost blasphemous. I could take bodybuilders out of a gym at Muscle Beach in South California, bring them in and teach them Kriya Yoga and say, now feel these sensations. Feel it at your coccyx, going up through your sacrum. They feel it. They know exactly what I'm talking about. Extend it out to your middle finger from the heart channel, the middle finger to your heart. They feel the whole channel. Why? Because they spend all day feeling their bodies. They're pushing and squeezing and trying to feel each little muscle fiber. The mind-body connection for these people is incredible. It's just not trained in a dharmic sense. So a lot of the early yoga that we practice and reason for practicing, or Neigong, Qigong, is to develop a mind-body connection. But then I believe some people can go too far. Okay, any kind of strong exercise interferes with that energy that we're developing. No, it doesn't. If you overtrain, you're going to drain certain aspects of your energy, the softer moon-like aspects, the yin energy. Yeah, that's problematic. If you don't overtrain, being strong is not a problem. Being able to run up a mountain is a good thing, right? You can also get that same kind of fitness, if you can call it that, in some way by really, really training that yogic body to a high level. And something happens and your physiology transforms. You don't have to go run sprints on the beach or sprints on the football field. But this is something I've seen in very rare cases where people dedicate their whole life to this kind of training all day and night. And it seems a little bit too much based on a physical body result, not really some dharmic anymore. So like, who cares? It's like having a city, but you're not realized. Now, in the Chinese schools, specifically in particular, like you're talking about, they're trying to alter your shape of the body. I had a master who was trying to get my spine really straight at one point from a Taoist school, but that school was related to martial arts. So you'll often see that these schools that do this kind of reshape your body stuff are often related to a martial art. There's often a martial art practiced in it. And when I left those schools, I went to train with another Taoist who was the 35th generation in his family inheritor. His name was T.K. Shi. You can look him up. Fantastic guy. Deceased now, but when I was training with him, he was already late 60s. He looked about 40. And he was like, no. Do what's natural with your body. Don't try to reshape it. In fact, he gave me exercises from his system to take out shapes in my body that were not right, that had developed from school, sitting in school too long and things like that, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, there was some shaping, but only in the way of allowing your natural nature to express through your body with more ease, less muscular tension, and so on. Now, in the end, bodybuilding, getting big for the sake of getting big, this doesn't seem very dharmic and can create a very lopsided experience when you emphasize only those dhatu forces, like Asti Dhatu force, Mamsa Dhatu force, Rakta. Bodybuilding has a great emphasis on it, and it becomes imbalanced with the 7 tissues. In Pranayama Ayurveda, which is a part of Trikonasana Yoga, we want to keep the 7 Dhatu forces really balanced between each other. So I don't want to have big muscles on my muscles and so on. But yet I do body weight calisthenics. I do HIIT training. I do, what else? Use weights and have in the past. So it's all a matter of, are you sensitive already? Do you understand these exercises? Will they close you down? If they're making you tight, that's a bad thing. If they're not making you tight, no. If they're making you insensitive to your body by pushing too hard and being too big and strong, this is a bad thing. Don't do them. But if you have sensitivity, if the exercise itself is bringing you more sensitivity, then it's a positive thing. So it's a for whom and when thing. The Chinese way of teaching by most Chinese teachers is to always go for this yin, 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 ease, yielding, 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 because we're naturally in our world, we're so aggressive, we're so competitive, we're so forceful. But there's a point where that's problematic, the yin, yin, yin. And if you keep applying it to physical reality your whole life, you can have a problem. My last Taoist teacher was going for this yin yin thing because he recognized super strong ambition he had in his life. Now, he wasn't big into physical fitness ever, and he wasn't ever into bodybuilding. He was, however, a lineage holder in Taoism. But even as a lineage holder already for about 10, 15 years, when we were neighbors, he discovered that he needed to do more exercise, straight up exercise. And he got a Swiss exercise ball. And he started working on this ball. And he was just amazed. He couldn't stop raving about this ball. And I said, man, you're preaching to the choir. I do this stuff all day. And we would talk about it. It's kind of interesting to see that, right? So he had to establish more yang, more effort, and use his body more to enliven his chi and, be healthier, et cetera. So he was too yin. So you have to watch for this. A great Chinese medical practitioner, Bob Levine, who has incredible psychic intuition through the pulse. I apprenticed with him to do my California State acupuncture license for a year. My wife at the time and I apprenticed with him. And I taught him Ayurveda pulse, which he was really cool to learn. He really wanted to learn it. He's such a sweet guy. But he was really the master pulse guy for sure. And he took my pulses. I said, I'm not feeling so good. I want you to check it out. This was his big intake on me. And he said, your lungs aren't pulling enough chi. And I go, okay, you have herbs for that? He's like, no, you have to run. I was like, what? Thinking I have to get away from this exercise. I had this thought back then, like you're asking this question. You say, I said, you have to run. You have to do some kind of something really that pushes your lungs, makes them burn, like cardio, like run up hills. I was like, wow, that's amazing. I've never thought he'd say that. And I looked back in my history and I'd slowly becoming more and more yogic, doing less physical exercise, less and less hard exercise, not teaching martial arts every day, not running. And I was getting into like, when was the last time I challenged my lungs? The 20 steps that I take going into my house every night. That's about it. So I started getting more oriented towards anaerobic exercise, HIIT training at that time. And it was a very good move to do. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a better understanding. I think the Chinese are sometimes culturally a little bit too far towards the side of cultivating the yin and don't work hard on their bodies. And it's become kind of entrenched and now passed down as a teaching. And I think that's not correct. It should be for whom and when. All right. I hope I got that for you. So yeah, try to participate in weight training and see how it works for you. Can you sit stronger and longer in meditation when your body is stronger? Do you feel more enlivened by it? These are the questions. If you get overactive by it and too heated up, maybe your right channel is going too much, maybe a different type of weightlifting or so. Okay, great, Travis. Good questions. Kuleshri, how do we benefit all beings by achieving a rainbow light body? I think I gave that before on One Yogi to Yogi. How does this contrast with other forms of benefiting others in the higher stages, such as choosing another human birth? Look, when I go into the death teachings in 2021, I'm going to go in great detail with this. And I think you're going to be with us already because you're coming for Acharya and you'll be living here. So you're going to get this in great detail. So I'm going to do a short version now because we have a lot of questions to get through. And I think I covered it in detail in one other Yogi to Yogi or another class that's on YouTube. How do we benefit all beings by achieving rainbow light body? Well, you're ultimately enlightened. You are a Buddha. You are a spontaneous arising awareness being and you know it. And then you get to show it. In other words, a Buddha, a huge Buddha, a fully realized being becomes a beneficial force in the entire universes, right? And then from their own Buddha body, emanations arise as deities and siddhas and beings coming out, So this is the greatest way we could benefit is to go for it. And that's why people will sacrifice so much of their enjoyment in life, live in a hut in the woods for 20, 30 years. People say, oh, that's not Boga Chamoksha. That's not realization with enjoyment. I want to do everything. I want to go to have coffee at the coffee shop and have cake and have my nails done and party with my girlfriends and still be liberated. Yeah, I know I'm being very, very cheeky, but I want to drive home a point. These people have gone out into the wilderness and meditated deeply so they can become a Buddha, attain a realized rainbow light body. And the sacrifice is very small because their motive is to benefit all beings. The sacrifice is very small. It's to them. But I realized if we're in stages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, sacrifice would be too much. You have to have your boga chamoksha, as I said earlier in this class. But please don't try to make a universal truth out of this. You can have your cake and eat it too. You should have your cake. You should have your pleasure and get liberated. No, there's points where you can't have your worldly pleasure anymore because it's just ridiculous. And you have to grow up someday and realize that. And everybody should hear that and pay heed to it. And I know I lose every time I do a yogi to yogi, we lose a whole bunch of students. But I don't really, care, honestly, because I've got to keep the tradition real. I care for all beings. Those people will find their way to it later, another life, whatever. Now, but I got to tell the truth. This is the truth. I'm telling you the truth. And if you want the highest liberation, you better give up these ideas of I'm going to have my cake and eat it too. That's what I want to tell you. If you think I'm going to get liberated in this lifetime by playing into all my desires and pleasures and spiritualizing them, a la Rajneesh, Bhagwan Rajneesh, what's he called now? Osho. Post-death, they renamed him Osho just to keep the marketing going. He's $1 billion industry. You're deluded because he was deluded. The man was completely deluded, cowering like a little coward in the back aisle of a jet plane when the FBI agents go on to arrest him. That's a Mahasiddha. That's a powerful person. They know he's on the plane and still he's hiding, crouched down behind the seat. I mean, really. So you cannot be taking these kind of people's teachings and examples for real. They're not going to get you anywhere. If you want your cake and eat it too, then don't want to be a liberated being because they don't mix. You have to put your foot down in stage 5 and go, all right, time to grow up. Doesn't mean like life is terrible at this point. This is what these people think because they're so attached to being like children with their enjoyments. It's not that. Life is not terrible. Honey, do I walk around with a whiny face all day crying about life? No. Right? Do I? No, because life is gorgeous. The pain of it is gorgeous. The pleasure of it is okay. The pain of it is gorgeous. It's all gorgeous. And until we get beyond the dualities of pain and pleasure, samsara and nirvana, we're not going to be liberated. That's just, you have to understand that. Now, rainbow body and a Buddha is the highest we can achieve, which can benefit all beings. That's why it's so beautiful. But you can't want it from stages 1 to 4. You only begin to think about the reality of it in 5. But in 5, it's still mythologized in your mind as some kind of amazing thing that will make you a great Superman or Superwoman. It won't be real to you till like 7, 8, or 9. So don't worry about it. But do strive for the highest you can get in this lifetime. Now, after you die, the brief thing is you can go into other realms and you can become a beneficial force yourself before you're even a Buddha. You can merge with deity yoga and become a beneficial force in other realms. You can maybe get realized to a certain level and then come back in another human rebirth and be helpful as well. So, yeah. 2, is the aptitude necessary for the Dzogchen path inborn and somewhat fixed, or is it something we can develop in higher stages, in later stages of practice? Well, traditionally in the Shaiva yoga, I was taught the oral tradition. Swamiji said, everybody will start in dualistic practice because the mind is dualistic for everybody. Then you'll go through semi-non-dualistic. Then you'll go non-dualistic. But in other trainings I've received, like from Dzogchen teachers and Taoists, they said, oh no, people have higher aptitude. They can start at a much higher level. Their minds are so purified, they can go directly in at the level of the mind, and it can go into direct realization. Now, I hear that theoretically. I have not met one person who can do it in my entire life. So I think it has to exist as a theoretical principle, but I think in practicality, you don't see it. So then, therefore, is the aptitude for something like Dzogchen inborn? Now, people who aren't familiar with Dzogchen, in the Tibetan tradition of Tantric Yoga, which they got from the Shaivist, Vajrayana is pretty much equal to Kashmir Shaivism. I think they're absolutely equivalent. I think they're the same, really. The theism of modern Shaivism ruins it, but I think otherwise they're the same. Go back to earlier in this class of Yogi Yogi where I talk about what is non-duality with Jorge's question, and you get the key difference. But they're pretty much the same if you take that one God thing out of it, the soup, milky white soup. So when they look at them, they're the same. Now, when you get to the end of those systems, both of those systems, you're not rainbow light bodied. You're in a state that the Shaivist and the Vajrayana call Mahamudra, where the mind is now resting its own nature a lot, not coming up with a lot of conceptual discursive noise, and you're fairly realized in the white bindu. A lot of people think their white bindu is realized today, but it's a very high thing actually. And then they stop. Those systems stop there. They say, okay, that's realization in those systems. But Dzogchen goes another step. In the oral traditions of Shaivism, which are truly part of Shaivism, but you don't see this today except really in Trikamasiddha Yoga mostly, talk about light body beyond this stage in Shaivism even. But even my teacher said, we kind of lost a lot of the ways to do it in Shaivism. We have a little bit of it. And I experienced it in dark retreat at my guru's dark retreat when I used it. But then he urged me to go on to study with the Tibetans in Dzogchen because he knew that they still had it. Here's the thing. This progression all the way through Tantra, whether it's Buddhist Tantra or Indian Tantra, if you get to the highest level, it's really high Mahamudra. You're good. But if you want to go to the next level, that's where Dzogchen starts. So when people enter directly into Dzogchen, they're carrying with them so many misconceptions, so much conditioning of body, speech, and mind that it really should be only held for people who've done a tremendous amount of discarding of their mental, energetic obstacles, or people who have that highest aptitude to walk straight into it, which, like I said, I haven't ever met. So that's why I'm keeping it as something for only later. And if people say, screw you, Dharma, you're trying to hold the teachings back, I'm going to go learn it from this Lama. He's teaching Dzogchen right now, or she's teaching Dzogchen right now. I say, go for it. Go for it. Because you're only going to delude yourself. You have to be in the right place to learn Dzogchen. And I think it's like the highest level, and we have to really wait for that. Okay. But can our aptitude be increased? Yes. As you go through these paths, if you get to the top of Tantra, either Tibetan or Shaivist, you'll be ready for Dzogchen. I mean, because there is an absolute teaching that says there is no preparation necessary. And theoretically, I understand that, but practically, it's not the truth, right? Unless you're one of these highest realized people already. Number 4, how do different traditions within TMY view the Buddhist concepts of Maitri or self-compassion? Yeah, it's interesting that everybody's having these questions about Buddhism meaning like that. Well, Maitri actually means friendship, Mitra, Maitri. Self-compassion is a little different, but I've never encountered in Buddhism or Dzogchen, hate doesn't exist. It's very psychological. When people start talking about self-love, you see this a lot in the Shaivist groups. You see it a lot in Wallace's stuff with his take on tantric psychology. And, he thinks the number one reason for, for suffering is that we're not feeling loved, something like that. It's just not classical teaching of Shaivism or Buddhism. So yeah, I can't really answer your question because I don't think the question is right actually, in this sense that there is really no sense of self-compassion. Self-compassion is sort of a modern psychological created thing. Of course, you shouldn't be bad to yourself, but when you take on spiritual work, you should already be beyond the level of, oh, I'm bad to myself. I have a negative self-opinion. I hurt myself. I harm myself. I cut myself. I put myself down all the time, whatever. That's really not a great place for a person to start the spiritual path. They should be doing lots of preliminaries first. Okay. You're seeing psychotherapists. Very important to see psychotherapists before you start this work, I think. So it's not a traditional concept. Okay. Number 5, do the paths of Tantra and Dzogchen differ in their view of the planets? Dzogchen doesn't care about the planets, basically. Tantra does. Dzogchen doesn't. Tantra is dealing with the phenomenal world a lot. Dzogchen's not. Dzogchen's only dealing with the nature of your mind. That's it. So somebody who practices Dzogchen might be an astrologer, and then they do it. It doesn't matter. But it's not part of Dzogchen. Dzogchen doesn't care or teach about the planets. 6, what are the principles of discrimination you mentioned in an earlier teaching, which we should apply in attempting to answer some of our own questions? Mentioned before in passing, but I may have misunderstood what you said. In any case, it would be helpful to know these principles. Yeah, we'll skip that one for now. That's going to lead into a big intellectual discussion. Okay, we covered a lot of your questions, though. Belinda, in the Guru Yoga lineage blessing prayer, I get stuck a little at the beginning. Can you please explain the difference between Ma Prana Shakti, Siddha Yogini? Okay. Is Siddha Yogini individual self? So here we're using some poetic Sandhyabhasya or twilight language where we're looking at the 3 bodies, the Shiva Bindu, the Shakti Bindu, and the Atma Shakti or Jivatma Shakti, or the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya, whatever way you want to talk about it. We're invoking these aspects, right? So the Siddha Yogini, is the human manifestation of the compassion and the spacious awareness of our essence represented by Mahaprana Shakti and Shiva. So that does refer to the individual. Yes, Belinda, that refers to the individual in its form as purified Buddha beyond samsara and nirvana, embracing both, but not touched by either. Good question. Joanna, I've been practicing the Yoga Nidra 2 to 3 times a day for months. Wow, you must be really well rested. Recently, my memory starts to be more blurred and confused with whether the moments and conversations happened from dream or reality. Some moments feel like a repeated cycle, but has different outcome. I start to question whether my mind shows me what is real. Not sure if it's a good progress in Yoga Nidra. Shall I train myself to be more alert in the presence, to have more differentiation between dream and reality? Well, when you are in retreat, everything gets dreamy, I think. And when I'm doing a lot of Yoga Nidra as well in retreat, I might be sleeping 3 hours a night and doing 2 Yoga Nidras a day for an hour each. So things can get kind of dreamy. And the truth is, when you're piercing through the layer of time, we have the three processes, right? Self, time, and light. After you get through all your self psychology, whatever, get all that done, and you enter into deeper practice in stage 5, you go, boom, stage 5. Then you start dealing with time. And time starts breaking down just due to the practices, just due to the nature of your energy at this point, your mind, and time starts breaking down. So it can get a bit weird. Straight up, it can get weird. There are more versions of time than linear time. There are, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour. This is all linear time. There are many other versions that are actually occurring that we're not aware of. And when you start to work with these layers, they may become apparent to you. They may bleed through into your normal crusty consciousness, And for moments, things can get weird. I had a very disconcerting 1 month period of my life, which I won't repeat now. I've talked about it many times in teachings, where time broke down for me. And thank goodness for the guide I had at the time, who was a fairly realized student of Satyananda. And he really was able to ground me out and teach me about how this is normal in a tantric path and during this phase of practice, stage 5, 6. Oh, thank God. Thank goodness. So it's normal to have bleed-throughs of weirdness of time. Where it gets trouble is when the weird bleed-throughs of other forms of time start to become more real to you than this linear time, because then you can appear psychotic, and then you'll need psychoactive medications. It can be like that. So it's important to understand that other times exist. When they come in, just be with them. It's okay. But understand, if you can, remain with an awareness that the main place we're rooted in this human realm while we're practicing is our physical body and its movement as an expression of time, past, present, future, linear time. And if you keep that awareness, then you can host all the other things. It's like when you take acid or mushrooms and time gets all weird, right? You don't get stuck there. If you get stuck there, you have a real problem. That's happened with people doing ayahuasca and stuff. That's not a good thing. It's a risk every time you take this stuff, which people seem to not realize. You don't want to get stuck there because then you're dysfunctional, totally dysfunctional. You got to live in a home or something and get on meds. Instead, when these things open, you want to embrace them. Don't freak out about them. Certainly don't start thinking about them, which makes it worse. And just go back to your normal thing. Just deal with life in a normal way. It's thinking about whether, is it a dream? Am I in a dream? Who am I in a dream? Butterfly dreaming thoughts can make us crazy, right? Am I a dream within a dream within a dream? We don't want to really go there. And are you making progress in Yoga Nidra? Yeah, sure. Because, as long as you're relaxing completely and your consciousness is expanding, you could have astral projection start. You could have even deeper types of experiences happening. Vijnana Nidra, these kind of higher states can start to dawn. Should you train yourself to be more alert in presence, to have more differentiation between dream and reality? So during the normal day, yes, During the Yoga Nidra experience, it's pretty clear what dream and reality is while you're in the Yoga Nidra. As soon as you lay down and put your consciousness into Yoga Nidra, you're already going into dream state in a sense. Your eyes are closed. You're already expanding your possibility. You're visualizing yourself from above. It's already opening into that other level. So it's fine to have that happening during Yoga Nidra. Matthew, on the topic of crowd psychology, the entrainment of individuals when they focus with intense emotion on a common cause. My questions would be, on the topic of crowd psychology, the entrainment of individuals when they focus with intense emotion on a common cause. Yes, there are entrainment. Okay, so people get entrained when they focus on a common cause. Crowd psychology is fascinating. Group think, all these books that are coming out now. Joe Rogan just did a great podcast with a guy who just wrote a book on this. The question you have is, the sheer power of the unconscious collective thoughts and emotions of groups of people lead to a total loss of inhibitions. They get carried beyond their own minds. If we consciously, as a collective, well, they get carried beyond their own inhibition that's in their mind, not their minds, because then it'd be realizing their own true nature. That would be nice, but that doesn't happen. If we consciously, as a collective, focus our thoughts and pour deep emotions onto a sacred image, are we literally giving our life force to that symbol? If, for example, 12 of us got together and focused with intensity and deep emotion on the image of Shambhunatha at the crown, would we add energy? I imagine you're thinking, or would you add energy to Shambhunatha? Would we exchange energy with those that have done so before us, who also have done the same thing? Will we amplify the energy for those that are to come? Okay, so that can happen. That can happen, actually. Higher levels of realization, and people are in there and taking themselves through fervent devotion into higher levels, can cause energetic manifestations, energetic phenomena in that environment or related to that icon, that kind of thing. There are stories of people meditating in caves for a long time and images forming in the rock of the cave of the deity that they were working with without using any tools or anything like that. If we believe that, I certainly do, but we don't all have to believe that. If 12 people get together and do intensity, yeah, this could happen, right? But why? Why would we do it? It's better that it happens at a place where you're at a Shakti Pitam, where the energy of that being already exists symbolically in that land, energy, in that temple, in the construction, the vastu of the temple, channels that energy better, contains it. And then you go in and work with the statue or the picture or whatever, and it's already imbued by being there already. And then you're giving it more and you're receiving more from the people who were there. That kind of exchange does happen and can happen. Yes. So what can we learn as practitioners? What can we learn from this? Can we use this as an inspiration as to what is possible through collective thought and emotion? Sure. It is inspiring to see what's possible through collective thought and emotion. But there's a lot of people who don't understand that principle as well. And let me make this clear. I got in hot water, as always, like 25 years ago when I was teaching this down in Melbourne or Canberra in Australia. Melbourne or Canberra. I think it might have been Melbourne. There was a hotel. We were in a hotel giving teachings, and next door was a whole group of, I forget what they were called. I think they were called immortalists. And there were people that got together and created a tremendous amount of group emotional energy, whipped themselves into a frenzy so that they could kind of get stoned on a trance where their normal discursive mind of limiting thoughts that they'll die, that they're mortal, that their body's decaying, that it's impossible to live forever, would be suspended. And they would focus on these images that were being projected on the walls. As a huge group, like 500 people in this room, loud, dwarfing, deafening everybody in our room. And they would project images of people that were known to be siddhas that were immortal and stuff. And it was, yeah. And they had chants they would do, and they would dance. They would run around the room, creating vortexes and breathe and do all this kind of stuff. And, they're probably all dead now. So that's the joke. And, the truth is there's only so much you can do with this whipping up the frenzy of emotional energy in your mind and focusing it, right? And again, what's the payoff? So if 12 of you got together and you did this to a statue of Tumpa Shenrab or Machanda or something, and you kept focusing on the crown, why? What would it do for you? What would it do for others? So it's not a practice that we do. It's not something we talk about. We're now talking out in the the realm of speculation. So I'm speculating. I'm not saying I know exactly the truth on this or not. I know that there are statues that can confer things. And there are, in 1995, when I was in India, a worldwide phenomenon was starting where Ganesha statues made of wood, stone, ceramic, metal, whatever, were drinking milk. And literally the milk was disappearing. Were they drinking it? Do they have a digestive tract and a mouth? No. But, spoons of milk were being held up by priests, by lay people, cups of milk even, held up to the mouth like this of Ganesha. It would go like this and it would disappear. Now people, oh, that's a magic trick. Well, you'd say that, except universities went and figured out it's not a magic trick. The milk was disappearing. So all they could say, because they can't prove the existence of Ganesha, was that people are offering milk and it's disappearing. We don't know why. That's it. A mystery. But the science at the universities were able to say it's not a magic trick, sleight of hand. So crazy stuff happens sometimes. We don't know why. No one got together with groups to try to make that happen. So I think, the teaching on it from our tradition is that if there's no teaching on it, it's probably something that's not so important, to be honest. But I like that you brought it up. It's interesting. Durga Murti, is it possible to conquer the fear of death? What would it be from stage 6 to 7? I don't understand. What would it be? Maybe somebody can help me with that. Or Durga Murti, if you're still online, maybe you can send it through and Suki can read it to me. Is it possible to conquer the fear of death? Yes, it's possible to conquer fear of death. Will it always be a little bit like frightening or a bit of a surprise when we die? Depends what stage we're at. Dalai Lama says he's still scared of death a little bit. So he's been practicing Dzogchen for a long time. So if he's still scared of it, we can give ourselves a break. But it's one of the most important things that we do in Hatha Yoga is to know the body so completely as a transient process phenomena that we go, well, in a way, I never was even here in one sense. I was never an object. So when I die, it's just another transformation. I've been going through these 12 stages of transformation anyway. So if I die in stage 5, it's a grosser transformation to a much more subtle very quickly, comparatively, than if I do it from stage 10, right? Or rainbow body at 12. So yeah, we can get rid of that fear to some degree, maybe all of it. The fear of death, depending on who you are, could be there from birth. It was there from birth for me. I remember from birth. It could happen, but stage-wise, where is it accentuated? We're going to confront it more in stage 5 because now we're working with time, and time is death, right? When you get through death, there's no more time. And we're trying to get through all of our attachments, our conditioning for death, for time. So 5, 6, 7, 8 are the big stages of fear of death coming up. And that's why the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, which was really written for people in 5, 6, 7, 8, not higher stages. That's another thing about understanding sacred texts. Who are they written for? Hatha Yoga Pradipika, although it covers the ultimate fruit in big, swathy terms, it really is it's a nuts and bolt manual for stages 5, 6, 7, and 8 through Kundalini Hatha Yoga. And there it's mentioned many, many times, do this practice to overcome the fear of death. And because that's what we're facing a lot when we're in those stages. So, what did you say, honey? Oh yeah. So there's a little bit more emphasis on that in stage 6, 7, obviously, because when we go 6, 7, when we go from stage 6 to 7, it's the final let go of consciously contriving an ego structure. When we become that shunya experience, when we start to realize our true nature in stage 7, it means that we did that. We're only able to do that because we finally discovered and let go of the grasping at an object self, at an ahankara that we think is an object, that we imbue some permanence into. More subtle than that, we start to release the conscious effort, no matter how subtle, conscious effort at ego formation, constant effort at self-image formation, no matter how subtle. Even as a yogini, like you as a yogini, even you got to let that go, right? Or you'll never get 7. So yeah, 5, 6, 7, that's when it really starts cooking. Most of our fear of death is gone in stage 7. Echo karmas of it will exist in 8 and 9, stages 8 and 9, okay? What happens after death relating to 36 tattvas? We telescope up to Prakriti Purusha and get reborn for practitioners and non-practitioners. This is a very big question, and I'm glad you're getting it. You're coming to Acharya training, so you're going to get a very deep lesson in this during the Yogas of dream, sleep, and death, because I said I'm going to emphasize the death part this year coming up in 2021, because I've been emphasizing the dream part for the last 3 or 4 years. So we're going to do that. This is such a big question. I can't do it justice right now. So it's not really like we're going up the tattvas, but it kind of looks like that. Telescope up. Yeah, in a way, we pull, if you want to look at it, like pulling yourself up, pulling your first up in the second, like when you do tattva shuddhi. It's kind of like that, but still a little bit different. It's a little too mechanical and too much in duality to make it real. Number 3, is it possible to reach stage 7? Yes. And maybe even rainbow light body? Yes. Having gone through foundational teachings only? Could be. So if you're really, really talented, you're one of these people who just hears it and boom, you relax into it. Yeah, because in the preliminary and foundation practice, I mean, I'm giving introduction into what your whole nature is. If you hear the view with someone who understands the view and you hear it correctly and you have the aptitude to become it, you can become it right in that moment. It's like everything lines up. So yeah, it's possible, but I've never seen it. Okay. Let's say a sadhak who has a teacher got the chance for whatever reason to receive only foundational teaching, studying and practicing them. Does he, she have a chance to realize their true nature? Yeah, they have a chance to realize their true nature, but that doesn't mean they're liberated. Like that doesn't mean they become a light body. That doesn't mean they become fully liberated. We have to make a real distinction here. Realizing your true nature, having that recognition moment does not put you into some exalted state where you're a mahasiddha. There's a big difference. There's a lot more work to do after that. I think that's what a lot of the neo-philosophical, theoretical Shaivists don't really understand. They have these little moments. I saw my Shiva nature. I'm so enlightened now. My white bindu. One teacher from these schools on their thread said, my white bindu is fully perfected. I was like, oh my God, that's like saying you're a Buddha. No way, buddy. No way is that true. It's like, that's the delusion. You can't just have a recognition. It has to be a sustained experience, and you can't be theatrical and, make like you're enlightened. That's all baloney. Anybody with discrimination can smell it. The sad part is in stages 1 through 4, you can't smell it. Stage 5 is when you begin to discriminate, like, oh my God, that person's so full of crap, it isn't funny. Okay. What's this number 1 and 2 on the back? Hang on a second. Where am I now? Anuloma. On some rare occasions, when people seem to be grasping a spiritual insight or relaxing into an experience of openness, I've seen a visual sort of spherical shape bubble burst out of them. I don't see them as light per se, but as an odd light refraction. I've seen you mentioning bindus popping out when you give transmission of teachings. Is that what it might be, or should I go straight to an eye doctor, regardless of what those bindus that you refer to? What are those bindus that you refer to? Okay. Visual phenomena can occur, yes, from an eye problem, but don't go there. You're probably okay. From your own projection, from your own prana, from the level of your prana, from the level of your physical body, from your eye itself, problem with your eye, level of your prana, level of your nadis, level of your chakras, or level of your bindus, When we have any of those levels of energy really cooking, and the energy of our ego is unraveling, it's really possible to have like an instantaneous expansion of some kind of energy, and you'll see it outside yourself. So if I'm looking at Sukalia right now, as she's editing all this happening, and I see a little blue thing over her head, is it Sukalia or is it me? This is the important thing. When I was younger, I used to think that was all stuff I was seeing phenomena happening in other people. As I got more mature and had deeper realization of my own energy body and the teachings and so forth, I realized, you have to know whether it's happening in the person or in the environment, or it's happening in you and you're seeing it outside yourself. There's a big difference. Big difference. So a lot of what I was seeing was happening inside me and I was seeing it outside. But sometimes I was lucky to have someone with me who also saw the same energetic phenomena. And I wouldn't describe it first, and the person said, yes. No, I would say, did you see something? And they would say, yeah. And I said, what'd you see? And they would describe what they saw, and it was identical. Then I knew, okay, this is, unless the guy was having the same experience as me, which could be possible, but kind of rare that you're both in the exact same exalted state. So we probably were seeing a phenomena of an energetic reality, but it was outside normal time space, but we were seeing it in the environment. Other times I'll say, did you see that? And no one else saw it. Okay. Were they in an exalted enough state to see it? We don't know. Open enough, unraveling their ego structure. We don't know. But most of what we see comes out of our own channels. One time I was late to a ceremony. I was supposed to receive an abhishekam, and I had to drive 4 hours to get there, and there were serious problems on the way, including a breakdown with the car. Out of my hands, couldn't make it. Ceremony was occurring in the temple. I said, okay, I'm going to just continue and sit outside and meditate on it and see if I can get some kind of halo, some kind of, whiff of what the energy was in there and receive some kind of blessing, and apologize to the Lama after. So I was sitting outside and meditating, and I was in a dark corner of the temple grounds. It was cool and dark. And all of a sudden, at one point in the temple, I saw 3 bindus appear in the air. And then they started doing something in a configuration. And it was like, holy crap, what am I seeing? And I thought it was coming out of me. And then I realized afterwards, talking to the Lama, I told him what happened. He said, wow, that's really cool, because this is what the ceremony is that I was doing. And he was describing the energetic mechanics inside the ceremony. And it was what I was experiencing. So here it was. I wasn't experiencing the ceremony, but easily I could have interpreted what he said, that I was experiencing the ceremony, the energy of the ceremony. No, the energy of the ceremony that was going on was what was happening inside of me in my practice. And that was being experienced outside of me as these bindus, but they weren't outside. No one else would see them. They're in my mind, totally being projected by me. So we have to know the difference. Don't ask me how. You have to train more. You have to train more. I've been trying to maintain second attention on the belly and feet for a while now. And even though it's effortless most of the time, I haven't managed to keep it up without interruption and breaks. I want to try something more subtle, perhaps the red bindu in the base. How do I know I'm ready to shift second attention to a more subtle level? Just try. And then you get your result. If it's easy for you to maintain it there, then you might have been holding yourself back in second attention by doing one that's unnatural for your state of development. That's how I always try. I do the next level of the practice. And if it's not cooking after 3 or 4 months, I'm like, I got to drop back. I went too soon. You can do the same thing with the second attention. One thing to mention here real quick, second attention on the feet. I don't mention this much, but now that you're saying it and you're far away now and I don't see you often, I want to make sure you don't fall into this. Second attention on the feet or the knees or the red bindu as a symbolic condensation of the energy of feet, knees, and so on, and how it relates to the 6 realms. If you stay on that too long, you may find that your hell realm can get accentuated instead of clearing out. It may make your hell realm worse. It may make your ghost realm worse as well. If you're focusing too long on feet or knees or thighs or red bindu, you can increase your lust. You can increase your anger, and that'd be problematic. So don't do that too long. Or make sure when you do it, you're doing it from like kind of a non-dual perspective. Okay. That's important. Okay. More on that when we do all our relations. That's where that stuff becomes really important. That's on the schedule for 2021. That's the 3rd course we offer in 6 realms technology, more the shamanic, tantric shamanism. But things like this, I give more information like this. Okay. Diane, is it possible to build bridges between Plato and yoga? I wish I knew Plato better. I just dusted the book off the other day. Knowing that the 4 limbs of dhyanas that progressively detach the mind from the gross sense sphere of desires and sense objects, leading it first to the realm of pure forms, and upon attainment of the dhyanas, entrance into the formless realms, and so, quite similarly, does the early Greek thought by pointing out the substantial relevance of the movement from discursive intellectual activity and detaching to the higher mind from bodily sensations and emotions in order to activate a meditative state in which soul apprehends the truth and transcends time. Okay, so you're laying out a kind of Patanjali's way of understanding, or Vedic Patanjali way of looking at dhyanas and how it moves us into a more subtle place. And you're asking, is it possible to build bridges between these Greek ones and Indian ones? Well, they had so much influence on each other. It's hard to actually separate them, I think. Is yogic shamatha, I think shamatha you're trying to say, like the Platonic praxis where the knowledge of the forms and final non-conceptual ecstatic union is attained by the means of contemplation? Is yogic shamatha like, well, the way you're using I don't know, the way you're talking here, it doesn't sound like we have the same definition of shamatha. But did you mean samadhi? Because if samadhi, maybe. If you mean samadhi, but you typed shamatha, let us know if you're online right now. So yogic shamatha that I was taught is simply the same as the Buddhist one, where you're sitting first in vipassana, and that's all clear. Once you have observation power, you go to the next level, shamatha. This is all in our mind training. And then when a distraction comes, you're sitting in observation. When distraction comes, you actually follow back the associations that were made. The first thought you're on when you find out you're distracted, my little red chair. And I go back to, oh, I'm sitting on this chair and it hurts my butt. And the thought before that was, oh, I should do this on a bouncing ball. And the thought before that is, oh, I used my ball today in my exercise routine. The thought before that is, oh, I really need to get a new exercise ball. This one's kind of getting old. The thought before that is, I shouldn't exercise too soon after breakfast, And then you come back to the first thought that made you leave it. Oh, I burped. And then my burp made me think of breakfast. So this is the way I was taught shamatha, to follow it back. And when you do this, you slow your mind down, which is one of the most important things you can do in the first two levels of way of meditation, classical mind training. You've got to slow the mind. Okay. So can we call them the same? I'm not sure which we mean, what you're putting out here, but samadhi, yeah, sort of. And our form of meditation is sort of like this, but we have practices as well in our 5 ways that don't go down this same purification dhyana route to arrive at the same result. Thanks for adding some very interesting new stuff. Plato and yoga, sure. Aliyah, we have Navaratri coming up. If and how is it celebrated in the Trikamacity lineage? I think we're in Navaratri already. I understand that mantras for japa need to be alive for the one who transmits them, and that the transmission needs to happen orally. That's all true in my world. Is there another way of receiving mantra for japa from you other than through initiation? Receiving mantra japa is initiation. It is a type of initiation. So they're not different. I'm a traditionalist. I don't give you a mantra unless there's some kind of initiation happening between us. Unless I talk about Mahamrityunjaya and Gayatri mantras, which we give out for everybody because that's kind of like public domain mantra. So is Om Namah Shivaya, right? So nobody needs initiation in those. I'm especially interested in mantras that are suitable for Kundalini practices. Okay. So it sounds like you understand all this, and it has to be, it sounds like your knowledge is good, and you understand that it should happen in a relationship with a teacher, in a lineage, in an initiation format. So let me at least jump to this and say, I won't do them any other way. Like you said, could there be another way? But no, there can't be. And the way that we do them for Kundalini practice is when you follow the way of fire in Trikamacity Yoga, which is our path of Kundalini Hatha Yoga. At each level, there's different abhishekams that you receive after level 1, not each level. Level 1's online, gets everybody into preliminaries. Then you show up. And right away, we're doing Shiva Abhishekas and Durga Abhishekas and Hanuman. Like each level has Abhishekams. Abhishekam means empowerment in the mantra in the deity yoga practice, because these symbols of the deities are extremely powerful to move and purify and direct in the proper way the Kundalini, which is our mind force, right? So that happens. All these things you would receive in the way of fire. So if you're into that, come to way of fire, and then you'll receive them all. There's quite a few. The 7 yogini mantras and all the 7, the Dakini initiations, everything all happens. Sukha Siddhi. You asked a big one. Was it in this session or the other session? Okay. So we only have a few questions left. Good. We'll take a shot. Considering that the biologists have their own taxonomy, classifying living beings in their kingdoms, and we have our taxonomy too in the 6 realms view, amongst other tattvas, etc., and stages, right? I understand that the first step as a sadhak, and for the sake of keeping mental sanity, is to stay human and not act like an animal, a ghost, a titan, a demon, or a god. True. But not also act like a distracted human. And the second step would be strongly choose a human path of realization. True. and keep walking in it, having as the goal realizing the base beyond the realms. Is that right? Yes, everything you said is right there. Okay. So when I realized that second step, I'm not sure what the second step is there. I will still be a human in a body, and my awareness will be beyond humanness. Or question, and will my awareness be beyond humanness? I never say it's beyond humanness. I mean, the human to us in the Mahasiddha path is a being that we have very little experience with, how amazing we really are. So if our body is changing at every level, even at stage 12, our body transforms into the universal body, then our awareness does too, right? Our mind does, everything does. So your awareness will not be non-human. It'll just be ultimately human, something like that. At stage 10 is when my body will actually start changing from human characteristics. No, it's always human. Okay, so everything is human. It's just that people don't realize that you can be Mahasiddha. This is human as well. So when someone says, oh my God, someone just ran the mile in 3 minutes and 40 seconds, that's inhuman. We say that all the time. Oh my gosh, a guy just deadlifted 2,000 pounds. That's inhuman. Oh my God, this great jiu-jitsu practitioner just took on 10 guys in a row, or like Carl Gotch or Frank Gotch did in the White House with Teddy Roosevelt, took on the 10 best judo players from Japan, who were the top submission guys in the world at that time, everyone was thinking, except for the Westerners. And he took on this great catch wrestler, and he beat all 10 in match right down under the floor of the White House in the wrestling room. Oh my God, inhuman. Frank Gotch is inhuman. No, we have this way of talking because we're so used to thinking about us in the lowest common denominator. This is not inhuman. We should say like, that's so human. That's so very human. We're amazing. Oh my gosh, my mind is blown. That's how we should really be, right? So no, you're still going to be human at 10. Let me say you're going to be more human than ever. That's a good way to put it. You'll be more human than ever. And yeah, your body's still changing. It's been changing all along the way, but something unique happens in 10 that you notice. You can now walk through a wall. Okay, that's a difference that we really notice. But in stages 7, 8, 9, even in 5, we can start to notice these changes. I started to notice them even in stage 3. I was like, wow, that's different now in my body, right? Or I become an enlightened human, just not identified with limitations of human realm. Oh, okay, there you go. Exactly what I'm trying to say. Good girl. Would a yogini be some kind of human god hybrid? Would a yogini be some kind of human god hybrid? Do you mean a woman who practices, if she's online, if you're online right now, can you clarify this for me? Do you mean a woman who practices and gets realized as a female yogin, or a yogini who's a reborn dakini? Or do you mean a yogini dakini who shows up in this realm but really is part of another realm? I think you're talking about a dakini yogini who shows up in this realm. Are they human god hybrid, like a titan in another way? Sort of, except you're all human. Here's the thing. You come from 2 human parents. A yogini dakini didn't mate with your mother. A daka didn't mate with your mother to make a yogini. Okay, a dakini. So you're not technically like Heracles, whose father was Jupiter, a god, right? Zeus. And mother was just ordinary woman. No. So in that way, no. We are fully human in our body when we're a daka or a dakini, a yogi, a reborn yogi or yogini from another realm. That realm of the yogi, yogini, daka, dakini below the siddhas, right? We are full human, but we have the potentiality that is coming from that other realm. Part of us does. Part of our mind is geared that way. Part of our energy is geared that way. Part of our capacity, creativity, skill levels, we're different. But we're all human at the same time. And again, like the Titans, having that great potentiality, but only partially there in a human limitation creates a lot of angst and problems for people in their lives. So you're not quite a hybrid. I wouldn't think about yourself like that. I think you're all human, and better to think of it this way. All human females will be dakinis when they're realized. That's the better way to think about it. You wrote, as I'm writing this email, my inner feeling of a physical body disappears as a sensation of having flesh, bones, organs. Paradoxically, my yoni only is very there. There is the shape of my body as vibration, as if orgasms, but not so intense. Especially face, chest, arms, yoni, and yin channels of legs, super vibrant. Eyes full of tears. Not feeling any emotion, specifically sporadically or specifically heart stops. It's not spelled here correctly. Heart stops for a long time and then beats fast a few times and again a big break. So this is happening while you're writing. So you're having some kind of experience. No big deal. Having difficulty resolving the paradox regarding the relationship between therapy, psychology, and spiritual practice. It's my understanding that all needs and conditioning of the self can ultimately be transcended upon liberation and enlightenment, right? It's your understanding that all needs and conditioning of the self can ultimately be, it has to ultimately be revealed to be transcended, revealed to be not your innermost nature in order to be transcended, to be liberated, to be enlightened. And then again, if you're still in a human body, it can hang around in the echo karma level as patterns and personality and so forth in a certain way, personality display, right? If that's true, then what advice would you have for someone in earlier stages? I think I'm getting this question right, hopefully not confusing you. In stages 1, 2, or 3, who wants to advance in their spiritual development, wants to avoid deepening the karmic bonds and attachments. In 1, 2, and 3, just do good psychotherapy, and do the preliminary practices. Spend your whole time in 1, 2, and 3 preliminaries and foundation practices. Don't go into deeper practices yet. Don't try to get rid and transcend your attachments and so forth. Just be aware that there's a being who generates attachments. Just be really soft with it all. Trying too hard at stages 1, 2, and 3 to try to rip away attachments and get rid of this stuff leads to imbalances mentally, leads to spiritual bypassing, dissociation, transcendentalism. So for someone in earlier stages, 1, 2, or 3, who wants to advance in their spiritual development, wants to avoid deep karmic bonds and attachments. For example, I struggle with unfulfilled desires frequently, more specifically loneliness. On the one hand, I have a voice in my head that tells me that loneliness is an illusion, that I shouldn't over-identify with that experience if I want to grow spiritually. On the other hand, most therapists have said that loving and close relationships are a basic human need, and I should work towards meeting that need. To complicate matters, I have 3 young children and a demanding career that call for my resources. Wait, have I jumped questions? Oh, I'm sorry. This is Mark Myers, no longer Sukha. Okay, I jumped there. Sukha, that was your spiritual experience. This is now Mark's question. Sorry about that, Mark and Sukha. Okay. There's not really a paradox in therapy, psychology, and spiritual practice. It's more like this. People nowadays get interested in spiritual practice, and that's fine in stages 1, 2, 3, and 4. But I think they should focus on the basics, Mark. And I think a psychotherapeutic approach to life at this point is useful without creating more mental entanglement. Some therapy with like a Trika psychotherapist, like Susie Darren or something, is good at these stages if we think we need it. But I went for a bunch of therapy and then I just did it myself after that because I realized I had the self-reflection power to be able to do it. The therapist even said, okay, I think you should just go do it yourself now. And then I headed into retreats. So, but this approach is important at that basic level because, the studies they did a long time ago in the 50s, they had a little cage and they had a monkey and they gave it an option of food or a furry doll to hug. This little baby monkey taken away from its mother. And it chose the furry doll over the food. It's a famous experiment that we all know. And it can be repeated over and over. So we have these deep needs. There is loneliness that comes up in us. And what I think is beautiful about this and your question is that these psychological defects, if you want to call them that, are reframed through the spiritual path as we go. Psychotherapy will frame it a certain way up till stage 3. And after that, the spiritual path and practice will reframe it from 4, 5, 6, 7. It's no longer a pathology. And this is an important principle of Trika psychotherapy. We reframe pathology because loneliness will stay all the way up through till stage 9. Yet it doesn't go away. Attachments will be not there in the form of attachments which delude you, but everything is reframed and re-experienced in a different way. That's all I can say about it. It's not like you wipe them out And then you go from psychotherapy and now you go into the spiritual world and you're clean and you have no attachments. These darker areas, these closed symbols will go with us all the way through our development. It's just that we are a different being at that point. We have a different consciousness. We relate to them in a new way. They no longer run our behaviors of body, speech, and mind, or they shouldn't. You're not in stage 7 and up, but they can be there as echo karmas. And this is the way to reframe it, okay? Loving relationships are a close basic need of humans. Yeah. So, yeah. It's all by stages. So when a person goes away to be doing rainbow light body practice, let's say, in a hermit retreat at the end of their life for 10, 15 years in a row, they're done. They're done. They don't need this kind of a relationship anymore. They've been through that in their psychotherapeutic reality. They had a mom, dad, they got their love, and maybe they had a lover at some point, but they're like, okay, that hasn't bring me fulfillment all the way. It was a beautiful experience, but now I am finding a deeper level of fulfillment this way. And when that happens, we're at very high stages. To think that way ahead of time might be a bit delusional, right? Okay, hopefully I answered that well. It's a tough question. If not, we can get back to it when you get live online sometime with me, another class. Julia, for the mirror consort path, if two partners make a mutual commitment to proceed with unbroken loyalty in choosing to perceive each other in the highest light, help me term this more accurately, okay, for the benefit of all beings, pure motive, and both are of a sound self-possession, being able to take full responsibility for any fruit or chaos that arises in their respective lives, good. Then, if any obstacle, frustration, or mental fixations arise in one partner when relating to the other, the afflicted partner, maybe not afflicted, but the afflicted partner can know and trust that that apparition or fixation must be part of their closed symbol repertoire. Is that correct? Yeah, that's the whole idea. That's one of the basic functional principles of mirror consort path. Exactly right. Once we make that commitment, once we have that loyalty to that person, once we're not diffusing the energy by spreading it out with non-monogamy, polyamory, cheating, whatever, infidelity, we're loyal, and we've made a commitment that our partners are mirror, then whatever comes up there for us, like however we are reacting, when we say the partner is the mirror, it doesn't mean like if they go crazy with anger that we have anger. We don't mean that. This is going into mirror consort teachings now. It's that the partner is a mirror consort, meaning they are the polished mirror of our essence. So whatever comes up for them, if they're reacting with some emotional stuff, whatever it makes us feel, we're using them as a mirror of essence for our own reaction to see that we have this to work on. They got to work on themselves. That's true. They made that commitment already. And you may dialogue it if they're open to it and all the rest of it, but it's not for you trying to fix them, not for you trying to point them back towards their own practice. It's the mirror consort. The idea of the mirror is to reflect that whatever you're experiencing is your shit. This is a high level practice because it's really easy for someone to take advantage of it. That's why you have to have complete, as you said, complete trust and surrender in the partner that they don't take advantage of you at this point. So whatever comes up in them as they're reacting and doing their dance or whatever, maybe it involves you, maybe it doesn't involve you, but you're having some reaction to it. You're seeing some way that it can open you. At the basic beginner levels, this is how it opens you to your own essence. Later on down the track, many, many years of being together, many years of practicing mirror consort training, it's going to be like polished mirror facing polished mirror. And then you're going to be looking at essence. But we're always trying to, in between these hyperbolic kind of moments that you're talking about, we're always trying to see the essence in the other person, reflecting our own essence, right? So pretty much, yeah, I think you're having the correct idea here. Let me double check it. The afflicted partner can know and trust that the apparition or fixation must be a part of their closed symbol repertoire. Oh, it's not like, well, like I said, it's when they have their moment of having their reaction, you're supposed to grow from that. That's your mirror consort thing. Of course, they're supposed to grow from it too. Of course, it's their stuff. Absolutely, it's their stuff, But then it comes to, do they want to admit that it's their stuff? And are they having enough clear self-reflection to know it? That's why a requirement for a mirror consort path is like, you don't just jump into it. You're practicing meditation for a few weeks and you jump into it, or even like a year. Usually people have 5-10 years of meditation practice before they get into this, and a monogamous relationship. So clear self-reflection, basic sanity are very highly developed. The deep desire for the truth is highly developed. The trust in the partner is highly developed. It's a big say. And is this closed symbol discovery the main function of the consort path? It is in the lower levels of it, not in the higher or intermediate or higher. And much of the guru disciple path. It is in the lower levels, not in the higher. One by one, root out. Is it to one by one, root out, bring into awareness these subtle unconscious patterns of energetic tension so they can be experienced increasingly unreacted to and eventually released from tension? Yeah, in the lower levels. In the higher levels, it's much different. And I can't really describe that online. I don't want to do it online either. It's for the couples who come to attend the trainings. It's because it's too subtle. It's too meditative. Although it's very tangible to people who are experiencing it. The intermediate and advanced practice levels and teaching levels of Mirror Consult Yoga are some of the most advanced expressions. I would think the highest expression of you a person can experience in the world. And that means hard to talk about it online. So we're going to skip that for now. Yes, at the lower levels. Yes, yes, yes. And they're foundational, those levels. And they're great. Tremendous growth is there. Number 3 for you. And is it when the last of the Ahankara tensions are finally released, when the rainbow body experience happens? Yes. And the Ahankara dissolves back into the base. Yes, it dissolves back into the base, and it spontaneously arises under your own conscious awareness and volition, spontaneous volition, when it's needed to alleviate suffering for other beings after you are a rainbow body. So that's kind of interesting. Now, because I don't have Facebook on here, I can't see if any new questions came. Can you, can you please, there is no Facebook. I've been telling you this for the last,
Okay, when you say Facebook, you mean YouTube? There's no YouTube.
whatever I'm using.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it disappeared when we lost our transmission. It disappeared when we lost our transmission. That's what I didn't ask. Hey, there we are. Okay. Okay. At the bottom, only the bottom. Okay. Nelson Rodriguez, could you please share a teaching on mantra siddhi? On the road right now, okay. A teaching on mantra siddhi. Mantra siddhi just purely means the fruit of mantra practice, which means the fruit of deity yoga. So it means in your body, speech, and mind, you've become that deity in completion. And then because of that, the speech of the deity, or the mantra, which is the speech of the deity, the expression of the deity's energy body, is an aspect of your own spectrum. So that if you have mantra siddhi, you have the speech of the deity. Whatever that deity says will come true. Whatever that deity wants will happen. If they say, you know, Shazam, in my hand is a gold statue of Ganesha, then boom, it happens. So a sage that was passing through Canada one time was popped in on a kirtan happening in a town hall. My friend was there, emergency medical doctor guy, very grounded guy, but big devotee of Ganesha. This guy came in, no one knew where he came from. When he left, no one knew where he went either. So probably a Mahasiddha. And he came in and he walked right up in the middle of this satsang and sat up right where the guys were playing guitar and doing the satsang with the kirtan, guitar and harmonium and everything. And people kind of had this subtle vibration go through them like, this isn't ordinary. This person's extraordinary. It was an Indian person in the middle of, what's that town? Northwest Ontario. Can't remember. And basically this guy told me this story and said, well, when he was up there, he just started asking people, what do you want? And they would say what they want, and he would say it and it would appear. So he took my friend and he said, close your hand. And he said, I want you to think of something in your hand right now. And he was thinking of Ganesha because he loves Ganesha so much. And he said, open your hand. When he opened his hand, a gold statue of Ganesha was there, which he later verified through weight analysis to be gold. And it wasn't there before. And that's a darn good trick if you can pull it off. So it wasn't sleight of hand. So this would be one of the ways you could see mantra siddhi. Another would be to heal somebody. Another would be to, so they're powers. But the main siddhi of mantra siddhi is that you are the deity and that you're fairly liberated. You're heading up in stage 8, 9, or 10. You can have mantra siddhi and have completion of the deity yoga and be in stage 8. or 9 or 10. Now, this guy happened to probably be in 9 or 10. Okay, so that's a short one on that. Is that it? All right, so we did a marathon there. Happy you could stick it out. All the best. Go have a break. Sarva Mangalam. Love everybody.